Welcome to EonCoat. My name is Ross, and today I'm going to introduce you to the dual component, pneumatically operated cartridge gun used for the low pressure application of EonCoat. EonCoat has provided a cartridge solution in this combined 600 milliliter option. These are primarily used for small applications, hard to reach geometries, where the use of plural component spray unit is impractical. Let's take a brief overview of the cartridge gun and its controls. You will notice that a simple air connection is all that is required. Just the same as any application where compressed air is involved, clean, dry compressed air is imperative. Substrate as well as material contamination may occur if this important aspect is not adhered to. Running through the controls, we have an atomizing airflow regulator and an isolation ball valve just above the air inlet connection. This is used to set air pressure required to atomize the EonCoat as it exits the static mixer and into the atomizing nozzle. A forward and reverse actuator, which is used to alter direction of the dual plungers for both spray and removal of spent cartridges. A rotary rear-mounted air regulator, which is used to increase or decrease the plunger pressure, resulting in the speed and pressure at which the material is pushed through the static mixer. An air atomization hose and connection, which connects to the front air atomizing nozzle. Remember, the faster you eject the mixed material through the atomizing nozzle, the more air to atomizing pressure will be required to generate a good spray pattern. This will take some getting used to, but once you set the desired spray settings, these are easily repeated for every cartridge. Adjustments will need to be made according to material and ambient conditions, as well as the profiles you are spraying. We will go through these steps including setup and spray after this. A very important thing to remember is that as per the plural spray unit application, we will need to apply EonCoat with the cartridge gun the exact same way in terms of wet film build and in one pass. Let's head down to the workshop and run through the cartridge gun setup and spray. Welcome back. We're geared up now and ready to demonstrate the setup and use of the EonCoat dual cartridge gun. Remember, adhere to your site-specific PP requirements. Being a zero VOC material, all that we require is a suitable dust mask, eye protection and hand protection. Let's now take a look at the gun. As explained earlier, we have our airflow regulator. If I open up the isolation valve, I will get airflow. I can both increase and decrease airflow and re-isolate. This relates to atomizing pressure at the front of the nozzle. We have our directional valve, forward and backwards. When we trigger the gun, we can get reverse motion, we can get forward motion, reverse motion again for removing those spent cartridge. We also have a regulator, which if we increase that pressure, the forward motion will be quicker. If we decrease it, the motion will be slower. We always start the gun off at a low speed and incrementally increase as required in terms of flow rate. Our trigger assembly is on the front of the handle, as per any standard triggered gun. Let's talk about the cartridge in more detail. Here we have our EonCoat CP dual cartridge, which is a combined volume of 600 milliliters. What's very important with these cartridges is to make sure that the material is suitably mixed prior to use. So what we will do is we'll take the cartridge and we'll shake the cartridge in a forward-backwards motion for roughly 2 to 3 minutes. This makes sure that that material becomes homogeneous, especially given the volume solids in part A. Let's discuss temperatures. Applying cartridges below 18 degrees C may become problematic in terms of the increase in viscosity. The ideal temperature at which this is undertaken would be around 24 degrees Celsius. So if you have the facility, or it's that time of the year, where you need to take these cartridges and store them in a temperature controlled environment, I'd strongly advise that you do so. Let's take the cartridge over and show you it in more detail. Let's take a look at our cartridge in more detail. Here we have the EonCoat CP cartridge, 300 milliliters of part A, 300 milliliters of part B. On the top of the cartridge you'll see a retainer clip, which is essentially a safety clip. We'll remove that. We have a retainer nut. This retainer nut not only holds the stopper in place, but is also used on the front of our static mixer housing to retain the static mixer on the front of the cartridge. On the top we'll see our stop cap. Our stop cap needs to be gently removed. There you can see it's a separated cap. That separated cap prevents both A and B components from prematurely mixing. What's very important to note, once we've mixed this up correctly, is that we have a look in the A and B side and we look for any solid matter. Now, being very mindful of cross-contamination, we can take something or a tool like this, or even a small flat screwdriver that is clean, and we can actually just push it in the top and make sure there's no hard plugs of material there. Make sure that's clean to prevent cross-contamination. In the other side, we can push it in there and make sure there's no solid content there. Once we've made sure that there's no solid plugs of material, we're now ready to assemble our static mixer assembly. If we take our static mixer assembly, push it through the retainer nut, put it over the top of the dual cartridge, and screw it down. Next, if we switch the cartridge around, we have our atomizing nozzle attachment. Our atomizing nozzle attachment goes onto the front and turns to lock in place. What we need to ensure is when the cartridge is laying flat, that air attachment is facing downwards. So what I can do is loosen that, swivel that around so it's in the downward position, and re-tighten up our retainer nut. Our cartridge now is ready to spray. What you will notice is that I'm holding the cartridge in the up position. We don't want to lay the cartridge down or invert the cartridge, otherwise you do run the risk of the material starting to prematurely cure at the front if they do come into contact with each other. Let's take the cartridge and now install it in the handpiece. Now that our cartridge is ready to insert into the cartridge gun, let's run through the initial setup of the cartridge gun once more. We're going to make sure that our regulator is turned out all the way until it stops, and we're going to turn it in 1.5 turns. We're going to make sure that our plunger is set to move backwards on trigger in order to load our cartridge. We are going to open up our isolation valve for the atomizing air and make sure we've got at least 10 psi of starting atomizing pressure. Let's take the cartridge now and load it into the gun. Trigger the gun so the two plungers go all the way back. Take your cartridge, put it into the slots and drop it forward. Take the cartridge after you've done that and slide it forward until it jumps into place. You will see the retaining nut sits in front of the frame of the gun. This is now properly locked in position. You can let go of the trigger, connect your atomization air. All we need to do there is push that straight on. That is ready now to go. I'll then take the cartridge gun and move it into the forward position. Essentially now we're ready to spray. Now that we're ready to spray apply, the first thing we're going to do is make a careful mention that once you start spraying with the cartridge, you need to continually spray with the cartridge. What will happen if you stop spraying for an extended period of time? The material will cure in the static mixer and at the front of the cartridge. So these cartridges are generally a one-use application. Now that we're ready to go, the first thing I'm going to do is give myself some atomizing air. Once I've got the atomizing air flowing, I'm now going to trigger the gun. On triggering the gun, I have a look at the plunger. There we go, we've got material coming out. I can actually increase the material flow by turning the back clockwise. There you can see more increase. And I continually move in a circular motion. I can slow that down. I can increase atomizing air and give myself a finer application. What we want to try and avoid is excessive overspray. Once you've got the gun set to where you want it, we can now start our application. So we'll generally move in small circles, making sure that we get our build up to the 500 microns in the case of CP, all in one application. We can see the droplets are quite coarse. We can either increase atomizing air, or we can slow down the actual plunger speed. As you can see, we have a really good control. Keep working in a circular motion and have someone check the wet film thickness as you go. As you get used to the application, you'll keep on improving your application technique. When the cartridge is depleted, de-trigger the gun. You can turn off your isolation air, and that is essentially complete. We can then disconnect our air atomization. We can alter the direction to the reverse position. Plungers will return to the back position. We can then remove our cartridge. Now that we've completed this cartridge, all our settings are true and correct for the next cartridge. All we'll do is set up our next cartridge, load it into the gun exactly the same way we did in the first position, and then start our spray application once more. Thank you for watching.